G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, midweek report time. Thanks as always again to the Hit Company for sponsoring this video. Link is in the description to their website and to their YouTube channel. They are actually currently looking for ambassadors, so if anyone wants to go on there, have a look, links all in the description. Let's talk boxing. Where do we start? Do we start with Jake Paul, Tommy Fury, or do we start with Conor Benn? Let's start with Conor Benn. By the way, just on Jake Paul, Tommy Fury, Sunday night we're doing a watch along. Now I'm hearing reports that the ring walk is going to be about 9:30. So I'm thinking, right, 8 p.m, 8:30 give or take, we go live, because I don't want the lives to go into the 3 hours, because the algorithms don't like that. They really don't. Anyone who's doing lives for more, pretty much if you do a live for more than 3 hours, you're going to have some problems. Not in the immediate term, but you know, if you consistently do it, apparently YouTube doesn't like that. 2 hours is kind of the sweet spot for a live stream. So I kind of try and keep it in around that. But we're going to do that on Sunday, 100%. I'm looking forward to it. We'll talk about the whole Conor Benn situation, okay? Because he has been vocal. He even got into a tear-up. Well, that's a tear-up. He got into a Twitter beef, we'll call that, with Errol Spence. And when Errol Spence is coming back at you with wisecracks, I mean, that's not a good sign. So basically, we know what happened yesterday. Conor Benn was cleared of any wrongdoing by the WBC. Shout out to Boxing King Media, all right, because they actually got hold of Mauricio Sulaiman. And, you know, Mauricio Sulaiman, the word he used was, well, I'm not a scientist, right? And I have to laugh, right? So he dodged that question pretty much like a politician, like a true politician. You know the way politicians, when you'll see it here, like there's often, like in Ireland there's a company called Grit Media. They're a media company, and they tend to be the kind of the odd ones out, where like they'll ask politicians the really difficult questions, because they very seldom get a word in. They get invited to a lot of events, like, you know, media for politicians and stuff like that, but they very seldom get a word, and when they do, you can tell politicians are just like, oh, shut up, why did I have to ask you that question? And that was kind of the way Sulaiman was. It was just like, or a good example again be Rob Tebbutt when he interviewed Glenn Feldman at Joshua Usyk too, where it's just like, please leave me alone, please don't ask me that question. It was kind of like that. So look, Conor Benn has been cleared and reinstated by the WBC. Now the investigation with the British Boxing Board of Control is still ongoing currently. Now look, I'm not going to go in depth with this. All I say is that the investigation is still ongoing with the British Boxing Board of Control. Rob Smith has stated, I don't know if he has legal grounds to do this, right? He obviously stated on TalkSport last week whether he has the legal grounds to do this. But he did say that until basically the British Boxing Board of Control and UKAD can go in and have their investigation and they get the dossier, which the WBC have got, they're not going to sanction Conor Benn to fight in the UK. He also mentioned under another license. So presumably you would imagine Conor Benn, I believe he's citizenship because he was raised in Australia, should be able to get an Australian license, no questions asked, you know. So I would assume by that. Now I don't know if you legally can do that. I know the board have rejected fighters coming in, you know, on, you know, licenses from, you know, Italy and stuff like that. But that's because like they've come in on short notice. Maybe the board have felt that they don't meet all the requirements, you know what I mean, like that. I mean, as in, it's a short notice gig, their lack of experience, their just everything, and you know the board have said not going to happen. But if they're not the ones who are governing it, I don't know the ins and outs, but that's what's happening now with the Conor Benn situation. So cleared by WBC for the first failed drugs test, because you got to remember the second one was not part of the WBC clean boxing program. It was the VADA testing, which Team Benn and I believe Team Eubank had to agree to it, agreed that will be in place for their proposed fight, which was meant to happen in October. So that one, does it really fall under the jurisdiction of the WBC? Because they didn't have a title, as far as I'm aware, on the line in that fight. It was a catchweight, non-title fight. So as far as I'm aware, it didn't fall under their jurisdiction, so they didn't need to investigate the second one because at the end of the day, well, it wasn't, they weren't sanctioning it. But that's the one the British Boxing Board of Control are looking into. So I'd like to know what's going on with that one. And, you know, Conor Benn, he's been coming out, you know, giving the... At the end of the day, right, Conor Benn, I've said this once, I'll say it again, he isn't the sharpest tool in the box. And sometimes it's better to just... I always say, like, keep a bit of dignity and keep your mouth shut is the best thing you can do. Because when you start mounting off and when you start going the way he's doing, all he's doing is he's just peeving people off. Now, maybe that's his intention. Maybe that is his intention, just to peeve people off, and he wants to play the villain. And maybe that could be a good thing. You know, at the end of the day, like, I'm not a big WWE fan. I haven't watched it in donkey's years now. But a lot of the villains in it, I mean, they ended up, you know, doing the great numbers. You know, pay-per-views where you have the good guy against the villain, and you want the good guy to win, but the villain wins. You know, I'm sure it's going to be something like that with Conor Benn whenever he comes back. You know, if he is fighting in the UK, people are going to turn up to watch him just to see him lose. Now, with Conor Benn, I don't think it's his intention to be a villain. I really think that he genuinely thinks, why aren't these people cheering me for, you know, getting cleared by WBC? It's like, well, it doesn't technically work like that, you know. And the fact of the matter is, there's still a lot that's not been answered. Certainly for me and several others. You know, you see on Twitter a lot of people, Sonny Edwards, Carl Frampton, Anthony Fowler, etc., being very vocal about this. There is still a lot of questions not answered. You know, apparently the clomiphene, which can be found in eggs, you know, it takes a Google search, it's the articles from 2021, you'll find that. But apparently that's not allowed in the UK. You'd have to import that from, I think someone said Mexico. I think there was a link to it on the Discord, or not the Discord, the Element group that I'm in with Hatman and the gang. So it's interesting. It's interesting. There's still a lot that needs answering, and I'd love to know what's going to go on with the British Boxing Board of Control on this. Are Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn going to try and just fight in the UK on a different license, Australian, Luxembourg, etc.? Are they going to start his career back up in Australia? Because obviously Eddie Hearn has been putting on a lot more shows in Australia, and he's signed a lot more Australians. Like, he's obviously got Bridges, he's got Sky Nicholson, he's got Liam Payne or something like that is his name, the guy who fought Brock Yavez, I think that's how you say his name, just think off the top of my head, I can't remember his name. Who else has he signed? He signed a few Aussies. Pretty sure he signed others as well. I know this guy isn't Australian, he's New Zealand, but he had David Yoka. I know he's from New Zealand, not Australia, but he had Yoka on a show a year ago, but saying that he's not been on a show since. He's got a bit of potential in Yoka, although he's looked a bit shaky in a few fights. I think there's probably more. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. So is he maybe looking to do a stable in Australia and have Conor Benn at the head of it? Who knows? I mean, at the end of the day, he was raised in Australia, so, you know, there you go. If they're happy to have him, at the end of the day, it's how you get around it. If the board say, well, you ain't fighting here, okay, we'll fight in Australia then. There you go. So we'll wait and see. That's the Conor Benn situation. It's an interesting one. The Jake Paul, before I actually get into the news, we'll talk about the Jake Paul Tommy Fury, because I had a look. They had their face off. It's all go. I think a lot of people were worried about Jake Paul Tommy Fury in a sense of they didn't trust Tommy Fury. He's pulled out twice, and they were thinking, is he going to do it again? Well, it's now Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. The weigh-in's on Saturday. It looks likely that this fight is going to happen. It's going to be interesting because, you know, I look at Tommy Fury and I've seen the way, Tommy Fury is Tyson Fury's brother. He has the Fury name. But I don't think, I think this is, I said this in my prediction video. John Fury must look at Tommy and think, well, you know, you're my son. You know, you're Tyson's brother, you're Shane's brother. They can deal with the pressure, you can too. It's not always the case. And I wonder with Tommy, because they've said things like if you lose to Jake Paul, you can stay in Saudi. They don't obviously literally mean that. But I'm sure they're saying it in a way, kind of playing the tough love. Now, tough love works for some. Believe me, it never worked for me. I was the opposite, like the tough love. I just tell you to F off and I'll do what I want to do. But actually, you know, I remember working in a job when I started working in gyms originally back when I was about 20. And then one of the guys was trying to do tough love, and I basically was just like, F you, we're going to have problems if you do that. And I ended up walking out after a couple of days and getting a better job. So I won that round, and he was sore about that. I was the winner. But tough love. It can work for some, it can work for others. Putting pressure on some, it's not always going to work. And I just think with Tommy, I don't think that it's going to work with him. I think if you put the more pressure you put on him, the more chance he has of freezing on the night. Because you got to bear this in mind, right? This is a big occasion for Tommy Fury, an occasion that he's never really had. Because Jake Paul has had these fights where he's been at the main event. You know, he's fought in Florida. I think he's fought in Vegas as well, where it's all eyes on him. Tommy Fury's primarily, I think he's only ever been an undercard fighter. Yes, he fought at Wembley Stadium, but he fought very early in the night in a pretty much empty Wembley Stadium. So there was no real pressure on his shoulders there. These were fights he was meant to win. He is going to be there in Saudi Arabia, top of the bill, in there with a primarily pro Jake Paul, if it's not all pro Jake Paul crowd cheering. And he's got the pressure of knowing his brother is there, his dad's going to be in the corner, they're expecting him to win, and they're pretty much putting the pressure on him, saying, if you don't win, how is he going to react to that? Because Tommy Fury has never shown the confidence or just the fighting spirit that his brother Tyson has. And you know, you can say what you want to say about Tyson in a business sense. And believe me, I think in a business sense, you know, when it comes to negotiating contracts, when it comes to just being genuine with the truth, because he's very disingenuous, Tyson Fury, we know what he is. But as a fighter, you can't take anything away from Tyson Fury. He's a tremendous fighter. He's tremendously talented. And he has tremendous confidence. He puts pressure on himself. And look, he's not afraid of anyone. He isn't. You know, you see people saying, he's clearly scared of Usyk. He's not scared of Usyk. He's just weighing up risk-reward. He won't say that, you know. He'll just say, Usyk's a middleweight. And his fans will say that. You know, his fans will be like, well, Usyk fought as an amateur, as a middleweight, when he was 15 years old. That's like saying what Marco Antonio Barrera, who fought flyweight. So what, you could turn around and say Eric Morales lost to a flyweight because he fought flyweight when he was a teenager? Such a stupid argument. It really is. That is Tyson Fury being the businessman, weighing up risk-reward. But as a fighter, he's a warrior. We've seen that. You know, he's not afraid of anyone. And I'm sure he would fight. I'm sure, like, if push came to shove and enough money was offered, he'd fight Usyk in his back garden. You know, if it was, you know, crazy money and stuff like that. But he's just obviously weighing up risk reward and thinking, I could make way more money fighting Francis Ngannou. Big risk fighting Usyk for not the same money. Easy fight against Ngannou. There you go. Happy days. Give me that bag. I hope that's not what he's thinking, by the way. I hope we get the Usyk fight. But Jake Paul, Tommy Fury, it looks like we're going to get this fight over the line. It's already over the line, but you know what I mean, in terms of it happening, no one pulling out. And look, I'm excited for this fight. I know that it's a weird one, because there are people out there like who genuinely don't like this fight for whatever reason. At the end of the day, it's getting people talking about boxing. You know, I seen a comment from someone, I can't remember, or maybe it might have been a tweet. No, it was Carl Frampton, actually. It was a tweet where he basically said his wife hates boxing, but she's interested in this. I think his mother as well doesn't watch boxing, hates boxing, but is interested in this. It's putting eyes on the sport. Jake Paul and Tommy Fury, it's a professional fight. It's under, you know, Jake Paul has his pro license, as does Tommy Fury, so it's professional. It's going on their record. I think that this fight will help the sport. I really do. And I think we'll see a knockout. I think we'll see Jake Paul knocking out Tommy Fury. Could be wrong. Tommy Fury could surprise me. I don't know. That's the intrigue, you know. I suspect I'm picking Jake Paul to win, but look, I don't know how good Tommy Fury is. From what I've seen, not particularly good. But Jake Paul, you know, he's fought UFC guys. One who was never a striker in Ben Askren, a basketball player in Nate Robinson, a guy in Tyron Woodley who was over the hill and shot to pieces, and a former MMA guy, MMA legend in Anderson Silva, a former boxer who had a pro fight, beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., but was still 48 years old. Tommy Fury is 25 years younger. So, I mean, where is Jake Paul, really? But I'm looking forward to this fight, definitely, so I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. Simple as. Let's get into some boxing news. Let's talk boxing. So, Tony Yoka versus Carlos Takam is actually now going to be co-promoted. It's happening on March the 11th. It's going to be co-promoted by All Star Boxing and Ben Shalom. Thomas Freire will defend his European title against Dan Aziz on the undercard. You may remember, that was originally set to take place in London. I can't remember where. It might have been in the OVO Arena. Might have even been there. And it got pulled. Well, it just got scrapped. So obviously this is why they're putting it on the undercard of Yoka versus Takam. Yoka is... Look, that might... Yoka's in need of a good performance after that Martin Bacoli fight. Because although you could look at box record, it could say, well, gee, it was a majority decision. They tried their best, and it's actually amazing to me that it was still. That's one of the most shocking results I've ever seen. Not Martin Bakole winning, but the fact it was majority decision. Like, they really tried their best to rob Martin Bakole. It's actually quite incredible, really, when you look at that and you see such a one-sided fight in Martin Bacole's favour. He had Yoka down a couple of times and everything, and yet somehow one judge found a way to score that bout even. Honestly, like, that really is one of the worst scorecards I've seen. That fight was just so one-sided, it was crazy. Like, honestly, I don't know how that ended up a majority decision. And how's Yoka going to be after that? He's not fought since then. So Takam seen better days, but hey, he's still tough, he's still durable. Let's see. Canelo Alvarez has confirmed that he will be making a homecoming defense of his undisputed super middleweight world titles. It's reported it's going to be John Ryder and in Jalisco in Mexico. So Canelo's homecoming in Mexico, likely going to be against John Ryder. We all know that Canelo was 99.9% sure he's going to win the fight. It's just a case of, will John Ryder do a Callum Smith or will he do a Caleb Plant, in which case I'm trying my best to win, but this guy is just better than me. I hope the latter. We'll wait and see. De La Hoya has revealed that he's in talks to sign Terence Crawford to a Golden Boy and the Zone deal. Possible fights with Alexis Rocha and Virgil Ortiz. And he said he also wants to make the Errol Spence fight. Very interesting. I'd love to. Don't mention the war. Don't talk about Spence Crawford. Eddie Hearn has revealed that he's in talks to potentially make Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev in June for the undisputed titles in Abu Dhabi. However, there are also talks of a fight with Joshua Buatsi versus Dmitry Bivol, followed by the Canelo rematch in September. It's a quick turnaround, but if they could, honestly, if they could get Beterbiev Bivol over the line for June, oh my God, what a stroke Eddie Hearn will have played. Because that fight to me, it was worrying for me, because not only was Eddie Hearn, before Yard fought Beterbiev, talking about, Bivol fighting Buatsi and then fighting Canelo at 168, Bob Arum wasn't talking much about Bivol versus Beterbiev. So it's not like you could say one promoter wanted it, one didn't. Both promoters just were like, nah, I think I'm going to match him with this guy, and then he's going to... And it's just like, no, come on, undisputed. And it's a great fight. I go back and forth, but I would slightly edge Bivol in that fight. I think the youth and the speed, but the sheer brute force, and I'd love to see Beterbiev versus Bivol. I really would. I'd really love to see it. Apparently BT Sport's going to get rebranded to TNT Sport in July, following BT's joint venture with Discovery Eurosport. Will also become part of the brand in the future. Okay, so it's just a different name. Alright, fair enough. Riyad Morata has announced that he is retired from boxing at the age of 37. Former middleweight world champion. One or two times? One time. It is one time, isn't it? He lost to Hassan and Dam. Avenged that loss. Didn't he? Yeah, he lost to... I can't remember his name now. The American fighter. Lost to him in the States and then knocked him out in 2 rounds in the rematch. God almighty, what was his name? Was it something Bryan? Something Bryan. Nah, it's gone. He fought in the World Boxing Super Series. Nah, it's gone. It's something Bryan anyway, or Bryan something, one or the other. The WBO have officially ordered Yalibek to face Liam Smith, interestingly enough. Parties have 20 days until March the 14th to agree a deal for the purse bid. Eubank Jr. has activated the rematch clause for his fight with Liam Smith as well. So how did they work that then? So it's not given a lot of time for a defence for Yalibek, in terms of to get the purse split, And Liam Smith, what does he want? Does he want a world title shot, or does he want the Eubank fight? But if he's contractually obliged to the Eubank fight, how does he get around that, if you know what I mean? So, look, I'm sure he'd probably want the world title fight. I know Yalibek he was looking good. He was looking good, and, was it one of two things? Did we underestimate Denzel Bentley? given the fact that he, in my opinion, he very much underperformed against Felix Cash. I thought he'd win that fight. I really did think he'd beat Felix Cash. I was very sure that he would, because he looked so much better than Cash throughout his career. And in that fight, it just seemed like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know what happened to him. Obviously, he got hit with a shot and he was hurt and taken out. But the fact was that he was able to jump up to world level and more than hold his own at world level. It's like, what the hell happened? Because I still don't really look at Felix Cash as a world. I see him as kind of just a solid European level thereabouts fighter. So it's all the more puzzling for me. But I would imagine Liam Smith's going to have to take the Eubank Jr. fight. Probably a more lucrative fight. Depends what he wants. Does he want money or does he want the shot at a world title? If he wants money, I mean, just take the Eubank Jr. rematch. It's as simple as that. It really is. It's as simple as that. So there's that. Eddie Hearn was interviewed by Boxing Social, and he said that he asked if he realistically believes he could promote Wilder versus Ruiz. We're in talks to try and make that fight. We'd love to make it. I wouldn't be wasting my time if I didn't think it was possible. So Eddie Hearn actually talking about potentially making Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz. Very interesting. Very interesting. Wilder has spoken about being a free agent. Eddie Hearn has mentioned Deontay Wilder and said, you know, I'll definitely have a look at that. So could we see Deontay Wilder amazingly being promoted by Eddie Hearn? I say amazing because Deontay Wilder has really been scathing of Eddie Hearn over the last few years. It's been crazy. Absolutely scathing of Eddie Hearn. But I guess with Hearn, it's a case of, look, business. It's just business. You say that about me, fair enough, but you're going to make me money. And I can get fights made. And Ruiz versus Joshua, or Ruiz versus Wilder, I think it's, look, if I was Ruiz, I'd be looking down the Filip Hrgovic road, because I think that's more winnable, personally, for me. But let's wait and see. Lucas Rozansky will face Alan Babbage for the vacant WBC Bridgerweight. Oh, Bridgerweight. Oh, we love that division. For the vacant title on April 22nd in Renzois, Poland. So Alan Babbage having to travel. What is the deal with Alan Babbage? So is he still promoted by Matchroom? Is he with Dylan White still? What's going on there? What is going on with Babbage? Obviously he's fighting for a world title as such. But what's going on here? Now I must admit I haven't seen much of Lucas Rensky. So I have to have a look. But honestly, Babbage has been looking pretty damn poor as of late. I mean, it's a big step up for Babbage because the guys he's been fighting, you know, what was his name? Shondell Winters, the KO Kennedys of the world. Even against them, he was starting to, he was going through them because they were garbage. But then, you know, you move it up and he was fighting he fought that French guy, that big French guy who had him buzzed in the second round and nearly had him dropped. Then he got dropped in his last fight. And he's just been looking, I don't know, I love watching Alan Babbage and I'll enjoy the ride. But I think that this roller coaster is about to come off the track sooner rather than later. No sooner did I mention Filip Hrgovic Ruiz that I see here. Boxing Scene reporting that the fight is not happening. And the purse bid's been cancelled as Ruiz has declined this move. Has declined to move forward with the potential fight. Okay, well that's right. Well, that puts an end to that. So, wonder why? Because I think that's a more winnable fight than Deontay Wilder personally. But that's the end of that. Luis Alberto Lopez versus Conlan is reportedly in advanced talks to take place on May the 27th in Ireland. Whereabouts in Ireland? In Dublin. That's a week after the Katie Taylor fight, because Conlan, he's putting a show on in Galway on April the 22nd or the 1st. It's a Friday. And when is the last time there's been a show in Galway? Jesus Christ. Has there ever been a boxing show in Galway? Lovely place, Galway, if you've never been. Really, really lovely town. Really lovely town. It's in Salt Hill as well, which is nice. I forget, Kieran Malloy is the guy who's headlining. Haven't seen much of Malloy now, I have to say. I think I seen him on Conlan's last card. It looks alright. But it's a homecoming for him. So I like the fact that Conlan Boxing they're bringing shows to the south, because obviously he's been doing most of his shows up in Belfast, but now he's bringing them down the country has this show happening in Galway. Could he do it in Dublin? Because Conlan, although he's from Belfast, I believe he's part of his family, I think on his mum or dad, one of them, I think it's on his mum's side, are based in Dublin. I think they're from Ballyfermot or somewhere like that. So would he do it in the Tree Arena? I mean, he might, you never know. I mean, Conlan is someone who, yeah, no disrespect, could do the Tree Arena, but I think for Katie Taylor it's a bigger fight than that. But we'll see. In terms of Conlan versus Lopez, I'd be making Lopez favourite in that fight, truth be told. I would. Just from what I've seen, I'd be making Lopez favourite. Josh Taylor, this is the last bit before we, because I think I've gone on a bit too long here. I think I've gone nearly a half hour, which I didn't intend. Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez is reportedly now agreed. Mark it in your calendar, lads. June 10th in New York. Originally, they were talking about Edinburgh Stadium where Hibs play. But apparently that's not going to happen now, and it's going to happen in New York instead. Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez. As I said before, look, would you class this as a duck? Because if you think about it like this, right, has Josh Taylor turned around and basically said, right, I'm not going to fight Jack Catterall, I'm going to fight O'Hara Davis, who was already battered from pillar to post once already. I consider that a duck. You're taking an easy fight that you know you're going to win. Teofimo Lopez isn't an easy fight, and there's no guarantee he wins. It's a bigger fight in a sense of Teofimo Lopez's stock is higher than, and this is no disrespect to Jack Catterall, but it is. Teofimo Lopez, a year and a half ago, he was on people's pound for pound list. You know, so a win over him is probably a bigger money fight as well. I mean, there's just no ifs or buts. It's a big thing. It's a big thing. So for Josh Taylor, he's probably looking at that and thinking, you know what, Teofimo, he hasn't been looking great as of late. You know, obviously the Jack Catterall fight, you're only as good as your last performance. He wasn't very good against Jack Catterall, but nor was Teofimo Lopez against... Well, Teofimo Lopez, he had a very negative style in front of him against Sandor Martin, it has to be said, but he hasn't looked himself since he fought Lomachenko. That's nearly 3 years ago. It's a quick 3 years, but it's nearly 3 years ago since he fought Lomachenko. Nearly 3 years, and he's not looked right since. Josh Taylor, if this is the Josh Taylor who fought Regis Prograis, if this is the Josh Taylor who fought Jose Ramirez, and if this is the Teofimo Lopez who fought George Kambosos, well, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one winner, and that's Josh Taylor. But, who knows what will happen? That's boxing. Anything can happen, and it usually does, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting. And yeah, let's wait and see. Let's see what happens. In terms of everything else, I think that is pretty much that in terms of boxing news. I obviously want to try and get a final thoughts kind of video for Jake Paul, Tommy Fury before the fight. So Saturday I've got pretty much a free evening, and we'll try and get one in then. I'm busy tomorrow night. Definitely can't do it tomorrow night, but we'll try and get one in on Saturday before, and we'll do the watch along on Sunday. So people, for now, I'll leave you with that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you did. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Thanks as always to the Hit Company for sponsoring this video. And yeah, for now, I'll talk to you. Peace.